York, Austin, Montreal. I usually do those webinars later in the evening, Eastern time. That's where I'm located. But yeah, today I decided to do it earlier just because we have quite a few folks dialing in from Europe as well, so that it's not too crazy for them time-wise. Yeah, here we go, Paris, as I'm talking about Europe. And plus, if we're actively on the job market, then presumably sort of like earlier during the week and also early during the day might be a good time just to get us kick-started, right? From Miami, hi from Berlin, hi. I grew up in Berlin. Okay, this is awesome. Okay, so it's 6 minutes past. I would say we're gonna get this started. And I do have the session recorded. So anyone who has to leave earlier, or for folks who are unable to attend, I'm gonna send out the replay after this. All right. So let me share screen with you. All right. So this is what I've prepared for you. So I call it Decode the Job Hunt in tech. And the reason for that is because I feel like some of the questions I get kept on being actually somewhat repetitive, and people were just sort of confused and frustrated by the whole search process. And and they felt like there were some secrets to things, to some mystifying parts to it that they may not know. And so I thought, okay, let's demystify it, right? Let's look at it, and so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, like I said, we're going to demystify the job search process in tech, specifically in tech, because the reason I'm saying that is because for some other industries, some of this may not apply. So when you look at government jobs, for example, or academia, even healthcare, right, hospitals and things like that, the process is just a bit different. And having said that, this won't just apply to tech either. You will be able to apply that also in sort of like investment banking, management consulting, sort of like other kind of also fast-paced, intense kind of industries, fast-paced. So yeah, I think it's really important to talk about this, because what I feel, I see that what we've learned about the job search process, and I see people, the way they talk about it, is just simply kind of wrong. It's just not working. And so we're going to highlight common mistakes that you might be making, and also going into actionable steps in terms of what you can do instead. Okay. And the reason we talk about it, I mean, it seems obvious, right? But the reason we talk about it really is, 73% of all job seekers say that job hunting is a stressful process. I mean, I personally don't think so, because I've obviously come to love it. But I do see that that's more of an exception, and the majority of people do think that it's stressful. And so, but I do know the feeling of getting really frustrated and desperate to some extent, right? To feel like you've kind of done everything, but still you just don't seem to get the result that you're looking for. And then when you're looking for advice, there are just too many conflicting advice out there as well. And the problem is that they are at very micro level. And so when they're conflicting, you don't really know what to do. What I mean by micro level is that they apply to the specific instance, which means that you don't have an overall framework that you might be able to use and apply towards another similar situation. So it's like if we just learn 1 + 1 is 2, and we didn't actually learn addition, but we just memorized that part, which means that we might know what 1 + 1 is, but we don't really know what 2 + 2 is, because we didn't learn the rules or the framework around it. And so ultimately, you do need a strategy that acts a bit like a map, so that you know where to go, and you also know why you ended up where you are, so it's, you can look at it literally and sort of say, oh, okay, I took the wrong turn, I need to go back there and turn left or right or whatever, right? So you need that map to sort of like guide you and to let you know what you did wrong and when you do wrong, so that you can self-correct. And and ultimately also understanding how to improve your chances will give you more control over the process. Because I do think one of the frustrating things is that you do feel like you don't have control over this process, right? And I mean, you know, definitely not knowing what's going on and what you're doing wrong, and you rarely get any really useful feedback either from the process. That surely will not make you feel like you are in control, right? All right. So as I said, there's so many conflicting advice out there. There's a lot of advice out there, you know, so why should, you know, you get coached by me, right? Why should you listen to me at all? And I mean, I think one of the things is I first thought, well, I sat at different side of the table, of the hiring table. And then I thought, actually, it's not just that I sat at different sides of the table, in terms of like I used to hire and I used to be an interviewee, it's not just that, but I've been involved in all aspects of the hiring process. What does that mean? That means like all the conversations around sort of budget, whether we need someone or not, the hiring decisions, the budget decisions around hiring, the negotiations around that, and also policies, documentations for interviews and so on, right? And these things are critical because when you are involved in that process, you understand the whole kind of ecosystem a little bit better. Meaning that, for example, not everybody you interview with may actually be someone supporting this role. For example, it might have been actually someone who actively fought against hiring that role because they wanted, let's say you apply for UX design role, and the person you talk to, they actually fought for the same budget, the same headcount, but you get an engineer instead, right? And so now they're sitting there, thinking you should have been an engineer. Right. And so knowing these little details, is tremendously helpful to sort of help you through all those stages of the process. And then also, I've reflected on my own career transitions, and I realized that I've actually had 5 career transitions, which is pretty considerable, a considerable amount. So I went from financial analyst, that was my first job in a private equity firm, to market research, then to management consulting at Deloitte. And then I went back and did my PhD and taught at university in the UK. And then I found UX, and then now I'm a coach. And I mean, I found my passion with coaching at the moment and so far. And so let's see if there's going to be a 6 career transitions. But the reason I'm saying it is because every time you transition, you have to a little bit reinvent yourself, right? Because you don't want to start from scratch, at some point you don't want to be the absolute entry career level if you've already had a long and successful career in something else, so you have to work on what it actually means to have transferable skills and how to sell them, how to, repackage it for people to get it, and so I really went from hating interviews, like I was very scared of them. I was very stressed out about them. And, I went from that process into being completely fascinated and really almost obsessed, with the process. Like my husband sometimes joke around, saying that, he would say not everybody is sort of interviewing as a recreational activity like you. So I really do enjoy that process. And that is probably related to why I also then went from getting not even rejection. I didn't even get replies to a lot of times, I mean, I got a lot of rejections too, but I literally didn't even get replies from many of those places that I sent my applications in. And then I went from there to, looking back in the past sort of like 10 years, I pretty much got every job that I wanted, and these are not sort of like random jobs, right? These are really dream jobs, when I look back, and not just my dream, but like a lot of people's dreams too, they were really like hot companies, hot roles, and so on, right? At a given time. All right. Okay. So before I dive into it, I don't want this to be too like woo-woo and motivating sort of thing, but I do have to throw it in. Because it is really, really important. I do think that an umbrella thing overall, the number one key to success, and maybe not even just job search, but just in general in your career, right? It's sort of like self-belief and self-confidence. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to like throw this in here for now, okay? And all right. So, but with further ado, I want to jump straight in. I have 6 things for you, basically. I have 3 things on why you might not be getting more interviews than you could, and what you can do about it in order to get more interviews, okay? And then I talk about 3 other things that will help you ace your interviews, like do really well in them, or pointing out the reasons why you might not be doing well in them. Okay, so 6 things in total. All right, let's dive in. Mistake number 1 is you may rely too heavily on online applications. And the problem with that is only less than 5% of online applications actually turn into hires. And so, I mean, in order to feel like you've done everything, and you do want to have done everything, especially in this market, you do have to have a very good resume. You do have to apply online. So you do have to do all those things, right? But just know that this is not where you should put all your eggs in this basket, basically, right? Because just like knowing that it only accounts for a very small part of your potential result. Also, you may have heard, that hiring managers, recruiters, they look at your resume literally for 7 seconds. That's sort of like on average, right? That's the scanning process. Obviously, if they're interested in you, they're going to look at it longer and read it, but the scanning and screening process, it's 7 seconds, right? And so how do you stand out in 7 seconds? There's only, and so there's only so much that you can do. And so all I'm saying is the heavy reliance on online applications, and that comes with also like resume updates and all these things. People focus heavily on this, okay? And this is the mistake number 1. Mistake number 2. So this process of sort of applying. So first of all, you apply online a lot, right? And then you don't get the result that you want. So then now you're a bit desperate, a bit more desperate, right? And you want to speed up the process. And so what do? You apply to more roles, you apply to more places, so you amp up your online applications, even though we just said that it's actually not the right path to go. But that's just what right? That's how we've all been taught to handle the job market. And so that's what you do. And then on top of it, what you also do is you diversify the roles. So instead of now just applying for a UX research role, you say that you're also a UX designer, or maybe you are also a bit of a data analyst, actually, or maybe you do a bit of data visualization, and so you apply to some sort of like some kind of front end job as well. And then, you might think like, yeah, but I'm actually not so bad at organizing either. So why don't I also apply to some design program manager kind of roles, and I mean, it seems really intuitive, right? And I've done that. I've definitely done that, sort of like looking at things, thinking, yeah, I could do that. I could probably do that. And this, I couldn't really do, but I need to increase my chance. I'm going to diversify the roles that I'm going to apply to. And that is mistake number 2. And the reason for that is because it takes you to all sort of different places, and it goes into that sort of like quantity over quality thing. It really depletes you. It takes your focus away from where you need to be focusing, and it makes the quality of your applications in the end actually lower than it could have been. Mistake number 3 is that we all heard about networking, and that being important, and it is important. But the problem is nobody has actually told us how to do that. Some people are naturally better at it, but in general, there's also a very specific way of networking in order to, like, networking as part of the job search process. That is also different than just in general expanding your network, for more sort of career growth. I personally did not know anything about it, right? And so when I look back, knowing what I know now, looking back, I basically did everything that you could be doing wrong when it comes to networking. All right, so I just summarized these 3 points about for you in terms of why you might not be getting more interviews than you could. One is you may be applying mainly online and sending out more applications when you don't see success. Second thing is you are targeting maybe several roles to increase your chance. The third one is you have a wrong idea, or people have told you the wrong things about how to actually network as it relates to the job search process, right? So you might be thinking that networking means like being bold and reaching out to random people asking for favors, and I mean it does take some guts to do that, but nobody, like very few people actually like that. So I don't know if you've experienced it yourself, right? But I mean, we're all busy, right? And so if things already come in like, hey, can you refer me, and you like never seen that person, it just doesn't, I mean, no, you can't, because I literally don't know you, and so yeah, that's not working very well. Okay, so now what can you do instead? So first of all, you do need to streamline your search to companies and roles that align with your values. And that requires you to know your values. And I don't mean like woo values sort of thing, but really sort of like be a bit retrospect, like look back a little bit and think about the roles that, the roles and the companies in the past that worked really well for you, and figure out what brought you most joy, where you're most effective, right? Why was the place so good? What was it about that place? Is it because it allowed me to work remotely? Is it because I had the flexibility to go to do a hybrid? Is it because the people were just really supportive, or because they were just very smart, because I felt like it's almost like a family? Is it because they are very formal and I like walking up in a suit? Well, what is it exactly, right? Or is it under pressure? That I perform really well? You have to find out sort of like what are your values about the workplace, that and it's not a preference, it's not sort of like a nice to have. What is the thing that you cannot do without, right? So for example, for some for for me in the past few years before I left Google, it was very important for me to find a company where I have where I have the flexibility to sort of pick up my young children in the middle of the day, without any sort of complications around that, right? And I was able to do that, but that is not a preference. That was a must-have for me, so and for other people, it might be sort of the environment, it might be some other kind of mission and vision statement, right? But you need to sort of know that, um, and and once you know those values, you can then really streamline the companies and then the roles that you are focusing on, and you really need to target them sort of more specifically. Another thing is sort of like, okay, so you hear a lot about resumes, right? And it is very important, obviously. I do want to sort of, like I said, call out that it's not as effective in terms of of a route of, if that is your only route to get interviews and hired, then that is the wrong way to do it. Having said that, it is a very standard document that you do need, right? And in order to sort of communicate, and what I do think that you should do, though, because everybody's got a resume. It's not like, oh, I've got a resume, do you have one? So you don't stand out by just having a resume, right? Even a good one. Okay, so you have to identify ways beyond your resume to demonstrate how you're going to add value to that company, to that team, to that hiring manager. Okay, and if you're a designer, you might think, okay, yeah, but I have a portfolio as well. That is great, but if you're competing with other designers, that means it's like the resume again, right? Meaning everybody's got a portfolio, as a designer, right? You can't just say like, oh, I'm an excellent designer because I've got a portfolio. I mean, that becomes just standard document, right? And so how can you make your resume, your portfolio stand out so much, that it is a really valuable document, but then also how can you go beyond that to demonstrate your value add, okay? And then the third thing is, like I said, network, right? And the key to networking, because we have the wrong ideas about networking, and I think the key to network effectively when it comes to job search is that you have to treat them like people. You cannot treat them and see them in your mind as people who can do things for you, even though I know that that is the goal. But you have to reframe it in your mind, and remind yourself that these are people, these are real people with busy schedule in their own life, and they are not actually currently looking for a job or looking to spend their free time to help other people or help you finding a job specifically, So in that case, approach them with sort of like a genuine interest in them, a genuine curiosity, and also with a long-term relationship in mind. And I know that that also doesn't seem super intuitive, similar to the not diversifying roles, and the reason for that is because when it comes to job search, when we hear this, we think, well, but I don't have that time, right? I need to apply to those things. I need that referral. I need that now, but that is just not how it works. If you focus on the long term, then it is a long-term relationship, then it will actually get you referrals and support much quicker than if you try to do it the bold and sort of me kind of way, yeah. All right. So acing, I need to speed up a little bit. Acing interviews, okay? How to ace interviews to ultimately also get job offers. So mistake number 4, just continuing from the previous 3 points. Mistake number 4 is the wrong preparation. I see people spend a lot of time on preparation, or sometimes actually also not a lot of time, to be honest, right? But a lot of people do spend a lot of time and effort into their preparation. And so it's not so much the problem with effort or being lazy or anything like that, but I do see that they do it they don't approach it the right way. They don't prepare for actually the right things. Mistake number 5 is when, they also, candidates are very focused on, when clients come to me, they're very focused on sort of like how they might anticipate the questions and how to answer those questions correctly in the interview. And I mean, obviously you shouldn't answer them wrong if there is a right and wrong, but it's, that's not actually what that conversation is about. It is truly a conversation where you let them guide and lead the conversation. That is true. That does not mean that it is sort of like a investigation where you have to answer the questions correctly. That's not what it's there for. Mistake number 6 is that you come out of the conversation and it's not quite clear what the direct value it is that you're going to add to the company. You might be a very impressive candidate, but in the interviewer's mind, it might just be still sort of like, yeah, that was really impressive, but I wonder how exactly they're gonna, succeed or do that here, And so if they leave with that question, you didn't do your full job in the interview. And so to summarize again, not knowing how to prepare is one of the reason for people not acing the interviews. Not focusing on answering questions, just focusing on answering questions correctly. And the problem with that is that your mindset is going to be a bit different, because then your head goes automatically to the zone where you sort of like think all the time actually about your weaknesses. You're trying to think about avoiding your weaknesses. Let's talk in a way that they don't see that I'm not actually so good at graphic design or visual design. Let's talk in a way that they don't know that I'm actually not so good at surveys. Let's talk in a way that they don't know that I haven't actually program anything for a while because I've been an engineering manager, so your head goes automatically to that focus on your weakness, and then ultimately by default you will touch on that at some point, or when they ask you about it, you're going to die on the spot, right? And also another thing is that your mind is then also very focused on showing sort of hard skills that you have. I know this method, I know this tools, I know, and all this is not that valuable because it's already in your resume, right? And some of it is also given. Okay, so the next thing is, like, as I mentioned earlier, that unclear how your experience actually translates to values. And that might be because the industry you've been in was very different, or the company type or something, the product was very different than what they do. And so they still have to do some of that translation for you if you don't do that. Okay. So things that you need to do to ace interviews is that you need to research companies and roles and prepare for it as if you already work there. Okay. So think about like how you feel about the company you work with and what you know about them and things like that. You have to get it to that level. Okay. Obviously, there's some knowledge that you won't have, right? And you won't have access to, and that's okay, but there's so much publicly available information out there, even for private companies, that you need to know in order to go there and feel like, yeah, this is a company I want to work for, and I feel like I'm actually already working for them. Okay. Another thing that also goes hand in hand with the correct preparation is that you need to know who you're talking to as much as possible. Some people are just kind of almost invisible on the internet, right? But most people are not. You can find them, and or you need to put your best foot forward to find them, to try to understand the interviewer's motivations and their involvement in the hiring process. And speaking of hard skills earlier, you need to focus on showing your soft skills in your resume as well as in your interview. 70%, especially if you interview remotely, right? As many interviews are at the moment, 70% of your conversations, of your demonstration should be soft skills versus 30% hard skills. And some of them you don't have to say specifically like, oh, I'm a good communicator, because maybe you just communicate well and they notice it, right? And so that goes into the 70%. Also, don't just be the passive person answering questions like a machine, because even if you do really well, that's just not the way to get the job. You have to have your own agenda, meaning you know exactly how you're going to add value to this company and to that team. And you have an agenda, you make a point of somehow bringing it across, whether or not they're going to ask you about it. Okay. So there is a moment sometime during that interview that you're going to squeeze that part in where you are so awesome and it's going to add so much value to this company if they hire you, because you can't rely on them asking that exact question for you to demonstrate value, right? And finally, understanding what their motivation is and their involvement in the hiring process is going to also help you tell the interviewer exactly how you're going to add value to their team, how you're going to make their life better, easier, basically, and spell it out. Ask about what are your goals, what are your challenges, how can this role add to that, how can I in this role help you, right? All right. But here's the shocking news, which is not that shocking, is that even though with this knowledge, and even if you have more knowledge than that, because this is really sort of like to give you an overview, right? Because obviously there's some, and I'm probably going to run webinars on like specific topics as well. So for example, like how to maybe rebrand yourself when you pivot to a different industry, to a different role or something, right? How you exactly actually do that, right? Because that, and what mistakes you can do in that particular process, because that in itself is probably a webinar in itself, right? And so this is really sort of like just to give you an overview of the common big mistakes that I see. Okay. But even knowing this, we have to acknowledge, right, that the reality is that the job hunt is still really tough, and the reason for that is because you're still going to have to face rejections. I mean, it's actually a must. Like you have to go through the no's in order to get yeses, okay? But you have to still face rejections, and you may not know how. You may not know how to do it successfully, actually, Self-doubts will creep in, and you will have moments where you have so many questions that are unanswered, and they just come ad hoc, right? They might come sort of like in the night or something, or after like an interview, and you just want to get it off your chest, or want some feedback, and and being by yourself in that situation is just not a very successful formula. Okay. And I mean, obviously we all have friends and family, but the problem is they are not in exactly where you want to be, and so you have to be careful whose advice you need to take. You can take. You only take advice from people whose reality is basically your goal. Okay. All right. This is just an example for one of my more recent client. When she came to me, she was searching, she was part of a layoff about 12 months ago. And so she's been looking for almost a year. And she was just, desperate, like really, she was telling me that she was like close to maybe just walk up to Starbucks and try to find a job there. And I mean, nothing wrong with uh, working at Starbucks, right? But it is wrong in the sense for her because she just has so many other skills that she can add value to the marketplace, right? And so in that case, it's not good, right? But she was so desperate, right? And like really losing all belief, not just believe in herself, but like believe in the market that it's going to work at all, like there's just no way sort of thing, and after we've sort of like worked through those specific things in terms of like self-doubt and answering questions as you have them, and also following very clear steps, and still away from the sort of like common mistakes, we're following all the steps in terms of networking, what you need to do, how you need to improve your presence online, and so on, how to approach people. She then started, and this is sort of like from a audio recording actually that I transcribed, but basically, she's saying, oh my God, Q, it's working, and I just remember that voice, right? And it's like really kind of not believing that this job market can turn around for her, basically, but it's always been there, right? You just kind of approach it the wrong way, and so just putting it there so that that it's there is a green light. Okay. And again, I have to go back to that thing that I said at the beginning, which is sort of like the number key to success is the self-confidence, is the self-belief, but obviously it's not helping your self-confidence or self-belief if you have no clue what you're actually doing wrong, right? And if you keep getting those rejections, that's just not very much of a confidence booster. And so what you need to build confidence in order to succeed are three things, right? You need a job search strategy that works. You cannot just wing it, right? And in the last 5 years-ish, in tech, or maybe even longer, actually 7 years probably in tech, you could have winged, like you and many people did, right? You can just wing it. You don't even have to wing it. You don't even have to do anything. And you could still end up with multiple job offers because the market was, the candidates market, it was just in tech specifically, it was just doing really well. And right now we're going through a bit of a transition, and so things are reshuffling a little bit, and so you do need a search strategy that works, that, guide you like a map, like I said at the beginning, right? So that you know which way to go. And if you end up in the wrong place, then you also know why, you know exactly like, oh, I took the wrong turn here and there. I just need to go back here and fix this. You also need a support system by experts who, like I said, who live the reality that is your goal, So don't listen to people who are sort of like never been where you have been. They've never applied for a tech job. They are in tech. They've never had were out of a job, or like just don't follow these advices, right? Even if they're really well-intentioned, okay? You also need a support system by peers as well. Peers who are going through the same thing, a similar thing, right? So that you have a good landing pad, to sort of like exchange things, and so that you can also take new perspective to see that it is not the end of the world if something happens. You also need to see that some of your questions are very common, and others have them too, so that you don't feel like you are the only one, you are the only crazy one. And also, you need a place to share little and big success, and you need to see those successes as well, so that you know that the market is still very effective, okay? And it's still very dynamic, it's still very effective. All right. The last thing that you also need in your success system or success formula, basically, is not just a high level strategy, right? I mean, a map is good, but you also need very actionable tactics. I've been in so many programs where they talk about really beautiful strategies and things like that, but then at the end I was like, okay, so what do I need to do now? And I still kind of like had to, I don't know, Google things or ask people things on how to actually now translate those strategies, right? So you need that sort of like hands-on actionable tactics and things where it tells you exactly what steps to take to improve your success rate. Okay, so I just want to offer you that there is help, basically. So we are running a 12 weeks of live coaching program, and the door is opening now. I only offer this once every quarter, and I open the door for literally just a week. And the reason for that is because we keep the number very small, very limited, so that we can focus on existing members to provide, to really sort of get them to the finishing line as quickly as possible. And so during those 12 weeks, you have weekly live coaching, and you're going to get coached to help you stand out from other candidates, to increase your chances and decreases the time to land your dream job. Okay. And we want to sort of take out that guessing game in terms of like, oh, I don't really know whether it was a good interview, what else I could have done better. We just take that out, okay, of that whole spiel, And so, I mean, a lot of people sort of like offer to update your resume, and so we don't just do that, because that in itself, like I said, less than 5%, right, of that route is successful, So we don't just pimp your resume, but we actually actively help you to become that person that hiring managers are excited about having on the team. And oftentimes when you are, in that interviewee stage for an extended period of time, you actually forget or maybe are not aware of how important it is actually to the other side of the table to have a good hire, right? They are equally stressed as you, honestly. Like they really want to have that hire that will make their life easier, right? Because ultimately, it is very possible that before you get hired, they have to actually do all that job that is not their job, and so and so we're going to make you stand out, right, to the hiring manager. And then you will also know exactly how to expand and leverage your network, because I think networking is really key. And there are very specific strategies, tactics that you can use to approach people, to have them on board and to advocate for you. And, without coming across sort of like needy or desperate or anything. And ultimately what we all want is sort of like to land job offers, right? And so you will be confident for each interview, knowing that you've prepared better, more effectively than 99% of candidates out there. Okay. And some of this, is sort of like specifically tailored to this market, because it is a little bit over the top, which was not needed at all in the past 7-10 years. It was just not needed. Okay. But now in this current market, we do need to try things and do things differently. We need psychology. We use science, right? We use a lot of things, but basically you're going to be prepared for interviews, and you stand out by applying effectively those interviewing psychology, because it is just another human you are actually talking to, okay? And who is going to make a decision about your livelihood. All right. And what's also important in that sort of like success formula, like I said, is that support system, right? And you need experts meaning you need sort of like professional coaches, right? But you also need leaders on the cross functions, so on those live coaching calls, I'm partnering with leaders from the industry. Some of them have used to be in tech, some of them are still actively, leaders from Netflix, Meta, and so on, and they are from different functions, UX, PM, DS, and Eng, and they will attend live coaching sessions just to guide you with actionable feedback, because, for designers, it's important to have your portfolio reviewed, right? And with PMs, you need to talk about product sense, right? And for research, it's also very specific to sort of like maybe talk about certain methodologies and stuff like that, and so we will have those. And like I said, I can't stress it enough, you do have to look for mentors and expert support who's living the life that you are aiming to have, basically. All right. And finally, really a key to sort of like make this whole process more effective and more fun, is to not walk alone, to have sort of like a group of like-minded professionals to share success with, to share learnings with, but also to ask ad hoc questions, right? And so there are a lot of questions where experts can help you, but there are also a lot of questions where the peers, chiming in is actually a better way, or in combination, to do it. Okay. And so this is just an overview of how we can help you. And I want you to know that, so that, you don't walk away thinking, okay, this is all I get. I need more than this, but I don't know how. Okay. And like I said, I'm opening sort of calls to register, to find out more about it, for exactly 2 weeks, so till the end of April. You can book a call directly with me through this link there, esvpcoaching.com/TJA. It stands for Tech Job Accelerator. And it's open until end of April. Okay. And the next time I open it again, it would be after the summer, basically, or in the summer, in Q3. All right. And with that said, we do have 15 minutes left, and I want to answer as many questions as I can, okay? Because I know you have many. So let me just stop the share here. Okay, let me just pass them on. Clear. Yeah, so, and I mean, some of the questions you probably have asked, during the presentation, and so maybe you've already got your answers. So Sally, for example, asked, what would you advise to do apart from online applications? Right. So I think I've already emphasized it a lot in terms of networking, but I want to sort of like say, package it a bit more clearly, maybe. Okay, so I've talked so much about sort of like how to not just do online applications, right? And so it's justified to say, okay, so what else can we do? The number one key to success is sort of actually there are two things. Most people get hired successfully through referrals. And that is not shocking to us, right? We all kind of know that, but that is where the networking effectively comes in. So you do need to know how to network effectively in order to get not just referrals, but advocate, to get support, in order to get the interviews. And then it's also up to you a little bit, right? To sort of like have the skills, learn the skills, and prepare properly to then ace them. I mean, at the moment, it's so the earliest stage of the funnel is so competitive, so that basically anyone who is getting interviews, I really just want them to ace them. Like, you do not want to waste that opportunity. I know there's also a lot of people who don't get any interviews at all, and who are sort of like stuck at that stage, right? And that is where I can help specifically with networking strategies in order to get referrals and support. Okay. But then once you get the interviews, you get a foot in the door, then you might mess it up. And that is really, really unfortunate at the moment. Like, I feel like with the market at the moment, that is a step that you cannot afford. If you need practice, you need to practice it with companies that you don't really care about much, like low stake kind of places. Okay. But most people also don't do that either. They go straight for the dream companies, have that dream shot, and then not preparing actually correctly, right? And so just taking a chance, basically. And so that's the one thing. Referral is the main thing, right? To get job offers and interviews. The other one is the hidden job market. Okay, the hidden job market basically is that part where roles barely become, like, either don't even make it onto job boards, or they do, but more as a formality, because they actually have an internal candidates or some favorites already in mind. Okay, and so you need to tap into referrals and the hidden job market, and both of them are done through network. That's why it's such an important key point. And I mean, trust me, nobody hated that word more than me before this. Okay, but once you actually know that you can break it down to very sort of like systematic steps that you can take, and you can also tailor it to your own personality and approach, then it's a little bit less scary and less kind of okay. You're welcome. Okay, let me go in the Q&A to see questions I can answer from there. And obviously you can, now that we're in the Q&A part, please add all additional questions that you may have. I'm going to go through them now. Okay. Yeah, what's the most important thing to Victoria is asking? Victoria from Montreal is asking, what would be the most important thing to keep in mind when reaching out to employers? Very important question. So the most important thing, and I mentioned it roughly through the presentation as well, is it sounds ridiculous, but treat them like people, basically, and it sounds particularly ridiculous for folks from UX, and I know there are many of us from UX here, on this call, but we don't actually do that, right? When we actually just sort of like jump in and especially if we don't know them at all, we don't have any mutual contacts, we don't know them, right? And we just kind of like slide into their DM, and then we kind of like say, hey, if you have some time, could you just look at my portfolio, or could you just like look at my resume, or can you hop on a call for 30 minutes? That's a lot to ask for from a stranger, right? And so, and by doing that, you are not actually treating them like a human. You are treating them like a human if you're actually thinking, oh, okay, so this person has their own life, right? They're not just on LinkedIn to find people to help, but they are someone who cares about something, right? And who has had a past, and so what I would say is sort of like really keep in mind that they are humans, that they are busy, and so switch the approach around, to think about, okay, if you would like them to invest in you, meaning, time or looking at your things and stuff, if you want them to invest in you, how would you like to invest in them to start off with? What can you do to invest in them first? And it might be as simple as reading actually through their profile and making a comment about it. Something like, oh, I saw that you volunteer at the dog rescue shelter in your local town. I love dogs. I used to do that too, just want to say that. So just take interest in that, right? To start off with. And like I said, it seems a bit counterintuitive to some people, and it seems a bit sort of lengthy, right? Just because we think like, no, but I need it now, but by doing that, you are actually getting to your result quicker, because what you ultimately want is not actually just someone who put your name in the system. If you've ever referred someone in your system, I mean, different companies do it differently, but there's a big difference between a referral that you're really, maybe it's your friend, maybe someone you work with, maybe you really think that they're so competent, right? The way you refer them in the system is very different than if you just sort of like do it out of, politeness, right? You kind of you become not just a referral, like you don't just do a referral, you actually advocate for them. I have so many times reached out to to the hiring managers to, to say, hey, did you have a chance to look at that profile that I put in the system, or that resume that I sent you across? I just think they are really good. I just think they would be such a good person for your team, considering this and that, right? Having someone on the inside doing that for you, that is gold. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just reading through some of the questions. Yeah, so how to practice for interviews? I would say the absolute key to practice for interviews is that you you really need to know how you can anticipate most questions. Like whatever you're going to go to this interview knowing, feeling that whatever they're going to ask, you're going to be able to handle it. And the key for that is knowing that the majority of questions are actually preparable, so people may ask things slightly different, different wording or in different sort of context or something, but ultimately most questions are actually geared towards the same. And everything that they want to know are two things. Okay? One is, can I trust you? Are you pleasant to work with? Are you someone I want to work with? Okay. And the other one is, how are you going to make my life easier? Especially in big companies, it might not even be the overall company's objective and mission, the big mission statement and so on. It might not be even that. It might actually, because it's not the company. I mean, sure, it's the company that hires you in the end, but it's not the company that makes the decision. It's that person sitting in front of you that has a day-to-day challenge to, whether it might be because they can't keep up with the organization of things. It might be because there's too many stakeholders. It might just be they need to actually implement a new system and they just haven't gotten time to do it. It's very practical issues, challenges that they have. And you need to convince that person that you're going to come in and make their life easier. And so in order for you to be able to do that, and so for you to practice and prepare for interviews effectively, is by anticipating, knowing as much as possible about the company, about the team, and about that person. And some of that comes from networking, just to hammer it again. But also a lot of really good research, to be honest, right? Like, it's just part of sort of like your primary and secondary research. I really recommend people to take it almost as a project, as a research project, almost, right? Like people are sometimes shocked when when my clients, right? They're sometimes, at the beginning kind of shocked when I send them tracker sheets, and say, this is how you track, the companies, the people, and this is how you approach things. They're like, oh my God, this is like, whoa. I was like, yeah, and I mean, like I said earlier, it was not needed before this, but with the current market, you do need to do things differently, and okay. Tiffany, you also asked in terms of like practice or interviews. I'm not sure whether you meant sort of like the, how to sort of prepare for them, because if so, then that's what I just said, in terms of, that's how, you have to do like really thorough research. You need to be able to sort of anticipate their challenges, issues, so that you can answer those two questions for them in the interview, right? Which is, how can you make my life easier? Can you make my life easier? And are you pleasant and trustworthy? And do I want to see you every day? Do I want to work with you every day? But in terms of, if you mean more sort of like in terms of like mock interviews, I mean, there are many ways, right? I mean, you can have mock interviews with peers, with experts. There are also AIs that can also offer mock interviews. They're pretty fun. No, I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, but they're pretty fun start, I think, But ultimately, if you want to do mock interviews and get feedback, then you need to do it with experts, right? So that after that but if you just, after that, they can also like tell you like, okay, so I see that you are answering this and this way, or I can tell that you were really uncomfortable saying that thing. Why is that? Can we change that a little bit? What can we say instead that is still saying the same thing, but you can say it more confidently? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, I don't want to brag, I don't want to sell, sounds too salesy or something. It's like, okay, fine, but you do have to let your value come across, right? So let's phrase it in a different way. Let's reframe it in a way that it still demonstrates value, but you are more comfortable saying it, right? But if you just want to sort of like have mock interviews to sort of like speak it out loud and get more fluent at it, then you can do it, with the wall, with AI, with friends, whoever. Okay. And okay, do a time check. Okay, we have like 1 minute left, and I have actually hard stop. So I'm gonna pick one question. But if I didn't get to answer your question, please ping me after this, okay? Reach out to me with the questions, and I will get them answered for you. Can you make your resume stand out? I mean, all really good questions, so I would love to actually answer all of them. Okay. How do you make your resume stand out? Like, honestly, I'm going to tell you what's most important about the resume, okay? Because you only have 7 seconds through the scanning system of an ATS system, right? Or of a recruiter or hiring manager. So you have to have a summary at the top that has all your achievements and keywords that the job description is looking for. Okay, so if you have that, that's gonna help you a lot already. Okay, because oftentimes we get automatically kicked out by the ATS system, or just don't get screened well because we're missing that. And in 7 seconds, they're not going to look through your whole thing. Okay, they're going to look at that summary, and don't make it complicated is also my advice, because complication is also not working well with some of the ATS system. Okay, I got to go, but I really want to answer one more question, because this is you guys here. Hang on. Okay, so someone is also asking, besides LinkedIn and Indeed, what job board do you recommend? There are so many others, actually. I'm gonna I have like I think 40 or 50 things on that list, and I keep on adding more to it. I'm gonna maybe put this as a document, and so people can just download it if they want to, because especially for smaller companies, they are not on LinkedIn or Indeed, and they are actually oftentimes the companies that need to hire really urgently. But you can definitely look into sort of like Y Combinator, Wellfound, and AngelList. These are some of the startup some of the boards where startups are. Okay, all right. Like I said, ping me, book a call if you want to talk more and find out more about the program and how we can work more together. Okay, and these questions, if I didn't get a chance to answer them, many of them I didn't actually get a chance to as I go through the list. So just ping me with them, and then I will send you the answer as best as I can. Okay. Thank you all so much for joining this session. I know it's free, but I always say again that it is not free in the sense that you do pay with your time. And so I do appreciate that a lot, for you giving me your time and spending here. I hope it was helpful and that you can use some of this. Even if we don't end up working together in the coaching program, I hope you can still take some of this with you and improve your process. Okay. And also, join the Facebook group. If I have a free Facebook group as well, where you can also ask more questions, and I answer them on almost basically daily basis. Okay. All right. Bye. Take care.